Who really invented ice cream? The frozen mystery that took 4,000 years to solve. What if I told you that one of the world's favorite desserts was once so rare that only kings could taste it? Imagine it's the middle of summer. The sun is scorching. The temperature is well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You have no refrigerator, no freezer, and no electricity. And yet, someone hands you a bowl of ice cream. Sounds impossible. But thousands of years before modern technology, people had already figured out a way to make frozen desserts. So, who really invented ice cream? Was it Italy? France? America? Or did ice cream exist long before anyone had even heard of those countries? The answer is far more surprising than you think, because the story of ice cream doesn't begin in an ice cream shop. It begins with snow. Around 4,000 years ago, people living in ancient China faced a problem that seems impossible today. How do you keep food cold when winter is over? Their solution was remarkably clever. During the coldest months of the year, workers climbed nearby mountains and collected enormous blocks of ice. The ice was buried deep underground inside specially built storage pits insulated with straw and wood, allowing some of it to survive even through the summer. For ancient people, this wasn't just ice, it was luxury. Only emperors and wealthy nobles could afford it. Before long, someone had an idea that would change dessert forever. Instead of simply using ice to cool drinks, they mixed it with milk, rice, and fragrant flavors to create a frozen milk dessert. It wasn't the creamy ice cream we know today, but it proved one thing: humans had discovered that cold could completely transform food. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, the ancient Persians were solving the same problem in a completely different way. Their summers were brutally hot, yet they somehow managed to enjoy icy desserts in the middle of the desert. Their secret was an incredible invention called the yakshal, a giant mud brick structure that worked like a natural refrigerator. Thick insulated walls and underground chambers allowed winter ice to remain frozen for months, even when temperatures outside reached nearly 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Using this precious ice, Persian chefs created chilled desserts flavored with fruit syrups, rose water, and saffron. One of them, faluda, is still enjoyed in Iran today and is considered one of the world's oldest frozen desserts. But here's where the mystery becomes even more interesting. Neither the Chinese nor the Persians called these creations ice cream, because real ice cream still didn't exist, not yet. As centuries passed, frozen desserts spread across ancient civilizations. Alexander the Great's soldiers were said to collect mountain snow and mix it with honey and fruit after exhausting military campaigns. A few centuries later, the Roman Emperor Nero reportedly sent runners into the mountains to fetch fresh snow, which was then mixed with honey and fruit juices to create luxurious frozen treats. But despite these delicious desserts, they still weren't eating ice cream. One essential ingredient was missing: cream. Without cream, these desserts melted quickly and lacked the rich, smooth texture that defines modern ice cream. Then history introduces one of its greatest myths. You've probably heard that Marco Polo traveled to China, discovered ice cream, and brought the recipe back to Italy. It's a wonderful story, except historians have found almost no evidence that it actually happened. Marco Polo never mentioned bringing back an ice cream recipe in his own writings. Today, many historians believe this tale was invented centuries later because it sounded too perfect. In reality, frozen desserts in Europe evolved gradually. Arab traders introduced sugar and new culinary techniques, while Italian chefs continued experimenting with milk, cream, fruit, and mountain ice. Over hundreds of years, these recipes slowly became richer, smoother, and more refined. During the Renaissance, Italy became the center of artistic and culinary innovation. The powerful Medici family loved extravagant banquets, where chefs competed to create the most spectacular dishes. One of those chefs was Bernardo Buontalenti, an architect, engineer, and inventor who was often credited with creating the first dessert that closely resembled modern ice cream. By combining milk, cream, egg yolks, sugar, and carefully controlled freezing techniques, he produced a dessert that was richer, creamier, and smoother than anything before it. Historians still debate whether he truly invented modern ice cream, but his recipe marked a major turning point. By the 1500s, ice cream had become one of Europe's greatest luxuries, not because it was difficult to make, but because ice itself was incredibly expensive. Every winter, workers harvested giant blocks of ice from frozen lakes and mountains, buried them underground beneath layers of straw, and carefully preserved them until summer. Serving frozen desserts at a royal banquet wasn't just about taste, it was a display of extraordinary wealth. It silently told every guest, "I am rich enough to control winter itself." In 1533, Catherine de Medici left Florence to marry the future King of France. According to popular tradition, she brought some of Italy's finest chefs with her, introducing sophisticated frozen desserts to the French royal court. Whether every detail of this story is true remains debated, but Italian culinary traditions undeniably shaped French cuisine. Soon, French chefs refined frozen desserts even further, transforming them into symbols of elegance enjoyed by kings and queens throughout Europe. Then, in the late 1600s, everything changed again. A Sicilian entrepreneur named Francesco Procopio dei Coltelli opened Café Procopio in Paris. For perhaps the first time, ordinary customers, not just royalty, could buy frozen desserts. Writers, philosophers, and scientists gathered there to exchange ideas while enjoying bowls of ice cream. What had once belonged exclusively to palaces was slowly becoming part of everyday culture. Still, making ice cream remained slow and difficult until an American woman quietly transformed the industry. In 1843, Nancy Johnson patented the hand-cranked ice cream freezer. Her simple but brilliant invention constantly stirred the mixture while it froze inside a container surrounded by ice and salt, preventing large ice crystals from forming. The result was smoother, creamier ice cream that families could finally make at home. It was one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of frozen desserts. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Mechanical refrigeration replaced natural ice, allowing factories to produce ice cream throughout the entire year. Winter was no longer necessary. Ice cream was no longer reserved for emperors or aristocrats. It became a dessert that ordinary families could enjoy almost anywhere. In 1904, at the St. Louis World's Fair, one of history's most famous food legends was born. According to the story, an ice cream vendor ran out of bowls, and a nearby waffle seller rolled one of his waffles into a cone to hold the ice cream. The ice cream cone was supposedly invented that day. But once again, history is more complicated. Historians have found evidence that edible cones already existed before the fair. The World's Fair probably didn't invent the cone, it simply made it famous. From there, innovation accelerated. Ice cream bars, chocolate-coated ice cream, soft serve, ice cream sandwiches, and thousands of new flavors appeared. Today, Japan serves squid ink ice cream, Turkey delights tourists with its famously stretchy ice cream, Italy continues to perfect artisanal gelato, and nearly every country has created its own unique version. Every year, billions of liters of ice cream are enjoyed around the world. So, who really invented ice cream? The truth is that no single person did. Ancient Chinese civilizations discovered frozen milk desserts. The Persians mastered the impossible art of preserving ice in the desert. The Greeks and Romans turned snow into luxury. Italian chefs transformed frozen desserts into creamy masterpieces. French royalty helped spread them across Europe. Nancy Johnson made them practical for families. And modern refrigeration made them available to billions. Ice cream wasn't invented in a single moment. It evolved over nearly 4,000 years, shaped by countless civilizations, brilliant ideas, and small improvements passed from one generation to the next. So the next time you enjoy a scoop of your favorite ice cream, remember, you're not just tasting milk, cream, and sugar. You're tasting 4,000 years of human curiosity, creativity, and innovation. Not bad. For a dessert that all began with nothing more than a handful of snow.